Hello, YouTube and YouTubers and Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom YouTube channel. There are some Wethersfield police. There's one of them with the name. They're reportedly brothers, an older Mendez brother and a younger one. He made a falsified police report as collusion slash S. For example, with a Bob Chase said that there was a police report with a Phil Cololo on it. Phil Cololo was one of the ones with predicate acts on my street. Since he said that, it was the only time I saw him on the street. And it was right after he was swerving a bike to let me know that he's connected to the kid the young man I don't know at all, who was repeating one of the names to try to threaten me to come attack him on the bike, apparently, about one of the kids I recorded them about with the abuses of. Wethersfield police, they faked conversations with me at the police station when I was a kid and now as an adult. Judge Napolitano, make sure he hears this. Judging Freedom YouTube channel. And all these countries, then Judge Napolitano subjects are involved here at the same time. You guys want to go use your knowledge of good and evil, don't do it. Because you guys we have things means here to discern what's going on here from A through Z. Here, Anthony, get me off the fake conversations with WFSB. Judge Napolitano. The WFSB is recorded. They attach me to fake conversations. They have collusions with uses of your Facebook page before and after you were with Fox Connecticut News. These are playing punk wire games, mail crimes, and they're putting fake audio and video at campuses that are filmed 24/7, putting fake ties, fake nature of ties to people. They even have their fake patients or real patients, whatever, put me in a fake conversation with them through the mail to other people. I can't even get a response from the Harvard Hospital. Put me in fake conversations with themselves. They have people involved with the Parks and Recs. And the security there, the lawyers there, people at UConn, the relationships between them, the roles with criminal enterprises next to it, at the place, private too. Originally and still, you guys can't even get on paper. Interbranch, there's a Brian Silver with the Britain Superior Court and the District Court, involved with people with Hartford courts too, and their family members and intimate ties, and like involved with a Joseph Dennis and with a park in West Hartford. Also with Eric Burgess, asked me for help, and I didn't tell him how I was going to respond before the World Trade Center attack. A lot of things I didn't tell him about that. That's also like that was in West Hartford and New Britain. He was also forced, tricked, or persuaded with the FBI director and his co-defendants and their family members and their lawyers to criminally foreign influence uses of multiple courts with organized crimes rules with other countries. And they foresaw these collusions with them before and after the World Trade Center attack. But they were also forced, tricked, persuaded, and kept only capable of it too. In other words, that's why they're refusing to identify themselves into branch. A bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court have been sticking predicate acts with facts as collusion slash S with a whole bunch of different countries at the same time. And Wethersfield Police attached me to fake conversation when I was a kid and now as an adult. These are also people, the difference of guilt of names next to the campuses or at the campuses. And the guilt collusion slash S is right where collusions are because there are other names involved. Not just all the other countries because they have the same problems there too, sickly distinctly. The breaching method uses how sickly non-distinctly. All the ways we can observe it are not deniable. Just with having black pupils' rights of eyes. We have means to discern worse than criminal incompetence with the subject treatments and the exception treatments relative of the identities of the names of the people of the sciences. Not just the law, but of the law, too. And the counters to them, collusion slash S, in ways that would not have sustained had we had principles communicated to ourselves properly for James Madison and about his plan to counter, extort, and force everyone to break the rules that no one could break without getting themselves and everyone around them killed, tortured, worse, etc. He made them do it anyway. And he could only do it to an extent. Our founders left to classify for themselves and for us. For example, why and how James Madison is the only founder that we know the name of. And you guys were supposed to allow people to be honest about George Washington. You guys aren't even being honest with yourselves. Or I would have brought up how James Madison had everyone counter-stored and George Washington was using his plan. The founding locations, descriptions of like Webb House. There's a witch trials place next to the Webb House, next to Webb House. Didn't have a the. Now they changed the name to the Webb Stevens Museum. They have other communicated for it then and now. Then our founders left to be communicated for that place. George Washington had to come there, not just to get the French generals' help, not just to, and when the revolution wasn't just against England, it wasn't just against slavery, but it's about that same method that had slavery both north and south entrenched. It only allowed roles with it. And then America's founders were born. Everyone was already natures of incapable of independence properly or of unity properly. All systems tactile from the unity of the independent human species body, made up of a whole bunch of independent individual bodies. Otherwise, we are demonstrated to by nature itself that we are using systems other than its own. This breaching method knew that nature would also demonstrate there's a human fact-achieving nature breaching method involved. Evil people forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the only people that could operate the phenomenon of the names of countries as the locations, areas, and states. A human fact-achieving nature breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to blame other things, others, or selves for things that the human fact-achieving nature breaching method caused. As a collusion between cultures, too. To hide that, too, it makes one or other, well, which one's guilty? It's a shell game. Black pupils. That's why one honest voice would have brought up how we have black people's whites of eyes. Nature is communicating to us. Everything is fake. What we read about American history. And then they defend over that and say, there's no defense of it. The only reason you guys could get away with defending it is because you have self-valued roles, even though you don't realize, replacing James Madison's plan. Replacing what they had declassified about why and how no one had free speech. Not just because they were internationally monitored conversations forced to measure and maintain everyone an extent of collusion / S syntactically, therefore physically against themselves and everyone else. Otherwise, that body was sentenced, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. And any grouping of countries that tries to counter this while it's still locations, areas, and states, subject treatments, exception treatments, nature as is, they can't afford to be, let alone to protract the very short words that they need to be able to defend themselves as countries A through Z. Here, Anthony, we are in a semi-ancient trap per /s, per a semi-ancient method /s. Everyone's the plural part, and the slash being the nature of criminal insidiousness itself. I'm not a lawyer. In many ways, thank God. Judge Napolitano, for example, he would help us, but you have to tell them that they're showing him the judges fake things, and the difference of who's doing it, or the judges. Oh, it's the judges did, it's the corruption with there. The forgiveness is to pay attention because there are predicate acts recorded with foreign names and a hyper-foreign name that used them through time since they were kids. Forgiveness is because A through Z, the names of the people, the sciences, they used principal treatments, tactical ulterior, from what could be defended and American history told properly. We would understand clearer than day why and how. There are multiple reasons to understand why and how. James Madison is the only founder that we know the name of, and how important it is to understand why. For example, there was a breaching method entrenched. Northern colonies and southern colonies sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly too, even with slavery, which means even with replacing what black pupils' whites of eyes communicate when it's not communicating, when nature is not only itself as criminal insidiousness, but per nature's definition of it. Nature shows us natural law is real. / natural / hypernatural law, because there's a way to check too. This is also the science of where and how to cause evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere, or to sense if we created a criminal insidiousness nature of a positive out of a negative, as the breaching method showed, only known to be done by people. A through Z, we only remember the science as having been abridged voices from off those locations, but then hyper additionally through real and apparent motivations, even the real ones though, are not really what it is, where and how the location / actually recorded. Whole bunch of people with the intelligence community at like Central Connecticut State University. There's a sub-BB Jerry. Why I never saw him on the inside of a campus in my life. I only saw him planting federal evidences crimes on both sides of my high school with people on my street. In a car, I saw him a couple of times. Increasingly, people with East Hartford intelligence and people tied to a Ray Colo, like a Phil Colo, was brought up with the principal child abuser. And now they're fishing to make more things. They paid 2 times, they totally made up digital things and made up wire crimes and made rape threats. And with Harvard Hospital has roles with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, leaders of them years apart. And they are with doctors like the ones named Leahy, involved with some prosecutors and judges from the Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and Connecticut's District Court, and their family members and intimate ties. Increasingly, people involved with untimely deaths, too, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, also with the names of the houses and businesses next to Harper Hospital. So they've been putting fake things and fake transcripts in databases, personally and professionally, with multiple courts, judges, and family members also directly and indirectly involved with identity thefts and frauds on my street through time, and their roles with retired police chiefs with the same house / escrow, a whole bunch of people at once that got brought into it. So a whole bunch of people with Harvard Hospital have further roles with Wethersfield police chiefs and like Mendez police and other ones with the name Dylan, who I never had a word of conversation with my life. People make nonverbal verbal communications for him, and then and other communications, and then he non-verbally from a distance. Like one time he jumped out of a closet with one of the people at Hartford Hospital who was a patient, but maybe a security pretending to be a patient. I didn't have a word of conversation with him. That was like, I'm trying to make it look like I know him too. When he came out the door, to make it look like I knew the kid next to him. I didn't even know his name, but I didn't recognize his face. These are people involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, including framing them for using drugs and medicines. And they have security officers and nurses involved, even veterans, veterinarians. In other words, people all along Route 175. Part of Route 175 is named Wells Road. They even have a family named Wells. I don't know the people. They try to pretend they'll tell you that. They were influenced to do that. As their roles also with Facebook. These are people with Facebook and the computers and their educators who have roles with organized crimes with the kids then and now. Inter-cities and intra-cities, inter-campuses and intra-campuses. There are more people tied to people that work at Rocky Hills campus, and one of the kids looks like he's tied to one of the police forms in courts intercities before and after the World Trade Center attack. That's why I didn't get into it. Yeah, I'm trying to get them on paper. They're connected intercities with the people. Oh, why didn't you say something? You guys have been faking conversations with me with these people since I was a kid. And with a Joshua Julian. I was never around to Joshua Julian. I only saw a picture of him on Facebook. They're also using Facebook collusions with all kinds of intelligence corruption, foreign and domestic. And like with Wethersfield Police, have people that are from Saudi Arabia involved with two Mendez police, forcing them to collusions also with sexual and medical offenders, leaders of kids, and people involved with the World Trade Center attack. And I don't know General King. And I asked the King family for help. No one will give me a response. No, I never, no one will give me a response. Something to do with her neighbors too, involved with body dumping spot confessions. And then confirmed on Facebook, then they take my Facebook page away. They're also changing and faking digitally what's recorded with whiting forensics. Increasingly with the intelligence, the difference of the guilt of the intelligence at the networks or the names next to them. These are also people that were put into two times I had a cooking class, for example. Both times those people are involved with putting fake things in databases with others tied to them. They're trying to make, no, it's nothing personal against them. And their roles with Church Street in Old Wethersfield and church and streets that go by the sides of the campuses involved with identity theft, fraud, slingers, other people putting the fake conversations, timing people when they're going to walk there and take a picture, making they look like they knew the people or they knew when they were going there. A whole bunch of people next to the networks, like Harvard Hospital, next to Harvard Hospital, also next to Fox Connecticut News in downtown Hartford. Increasingly, people in the Britain Superior Court, Hartford Courts, and the Connecticut's District Court have collusions with names at and conjunctive to the Wethersfield judicial branch offices and conjunctions to that, like Route 3. Wethersfield Pizza House also has wire crimes with people with intelligence families along Two Route Highway and Hangdog Lane and conjunctions to it and to that, like Route 3 and like the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. But a bunch of probate court judges, like more than a handful, and Superior Court judges, and a district court judge, and people and prosecutors involved with, like Brian Silver is involved also with the district court, I noticed, and with the FBI director, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members before the World Trade Center attack interstates and intercities. In the World Trade Center attack and since, they have collusions with organized crime acts and methods at and next to campuses, also with unions. There are multiple unions and their family members involved. For example, where they have union laws where they could lie about the other person, but they use it where they with exception, they make fake exceptions where they could use that as collusions at corners of buildings. Also as people involved with an untimely death at Trinity College, even if it was made up by one of the people associated with former director of the FBI involved, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members. Don LeConte has a bunch of people at Trinity College involved with identity theft, fraud, slingers. I never saw on the inside of a school in my life. One time they tried to take a picture to make it look like I apparently, or to repeat that I was near her, by Joe DeMoro and Heather Hansen, who also have roles of home break-ins in my area, and Heather with different people with that. And even if that was directed to her by the police forms and the courts involved with her, these are also people at the Central Connecticut State University involved with Detective Samuda. Years before, I remember that guy's face. I think this is the guy who was reportedly calling in rape threats or sexual things to one of the girls in the business office. And then years later, he had to hide that, and he got involved switching and forging names. These are also people involved with the name King, per Joe DeMoro. Joe DeMoro, in other words, and Joe Aiello has a whole bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold, who has a Joe DeMoro. I mean, a Joe I never saw him on the campus one time in my life. After he graduated, he came to make a fake exception with his sister while she was tied to some other guy in the fire department. He has more than one sister too, apparently, and they have something to do with this fire department next to Trinity College, and their roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with federal agencies and foreign countries involved with the World Trade Center attack, and with these Mendez police in Wethersfield, with houses and intelligence families who moved interstates or whatever. I don't know. Like with the name O'Brien is increasingly involved too with Sandy Hook campuses and a prison campus there, involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids. Collusions the prisons have with the crime scenes before they're to force the principal. They were involved with forcing a principal child abuser at Sandy Hook campuses, and with whiting forensics people and other. These are people at and next to the state corrections offices. One of the child abusers, leaders of the kids, recorded when they were forcing the principal child abuser. Also confessed the name years before, confessed the name Lance Cuddy involved. And these are also people from Russia and Ukraine, Korea, Italy, Ireland. People involved with the Frankie Reese have roles with the Clinton Correctional Facility, and their roles with those escapees from the facility, and their roles with Central Connecticut State University, training people to run the prisons, and their roles with the military, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. There's a Rob Schedule and his family and sister. I don't know them at all. They're involved with sexual circles for their neighbors, involved also with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids named tomorrow, and their roles reportedly with sexual circles with the probate court judges on Turot Highway, with people named Spada and Delafera, involved also with the Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, with a bunch of people in Rocky Hill with the Elm Street who had roles of predicate acts with facts and wrongdoing acting tied to that. With the campuses I went, there's a Officer Chris White involved increasingly with people involved with Ray Reynolds, who tried to make it look like I know Ray Reynolds and this Officer Chris White. Ray Reynolds is increasingly with a Harris family. Kevin Harris is one of the ones too with the interbranch and foreign, with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, and with doctors at Hartford Hospital, foreign and domestic, involved with their patients and criminals running into high life aggressions. They're leaving fake transcripts where there are places filmed 24/7, all ages and natures of campus. They're using that to fake things and ties between people, and putting that involved with predicate acts methods where there's mass communications racketeering worse than war crimes originally. And still, I'm not even a lawyer, but we have black pupils' rights and lives, and that's one of the things that it's about, how the breaching method reassigned with nature communicates with black pupils' rights and lives. It's a worse than war crimes. It's with readings of statutes that the people that try to justify their readings of statutes can't justify that and afford to be syntax proper with short words, let alone their protraction, as they are going to. We're going to get the Constitution on a bridge. You're going to get the campuses on paper, one name and sequence. I want a response now for Hartford, for Rocky Hill campuses. And I don't know if he was legitimately in the class, but people that involved with the Jonathan Maiano, involved with the intelligence communities, foreign and domestic, criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence, whether he realizes it or not. The intelligence families near me recorded, confessed, demonstrated too his involvements with this. So in other words, let's get him on paper with the ones named Mendez at the Wethersfield Police. Fake conversation me with the older Mendez. I never had a word of conversation with him in my life. And they're putting intercities, multiple falsified police reports and confessions where they change the arresting officers' names. In other words, they're extorting me. They're stealing my identity and have been doing it before and after the World Trade Center attack. Intercities with the campuses. Central Connecticut State University is recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming with people I don't know the names of. I never had a conversation. We tried to make a fake exception by telling me to do I mean, in other words, I only had good feelings for him too. Mr. Abruzzi. And then I found out though after, because I never knew who Joe DeMoro was. I only know about that one. He made one instance to make a fake exception of me knowing Joe DeMoro. Joe DeMoro is increasingly involved with home break-ins and intelligence families near me. They have been planting evidences with multiple police departments and like these Mendez police with identity theft fraud. Like their need to hide life progressions. Their whole careers are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrong. And that relative. So there are ones with the name Leahy who have their little girls in their family involved with organized crimes on Facebook, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Get them off the fake conversations with me too. So there are multiple people with the name Brendan Leahy. There are also women in their family, ones with other name and women named Leahy too. Like whole generations with the Harvard Hospitals Institute of Living and the triage roles. Also with the lawyers. And these are people with criminal enterprises next to the campuses through time. And they're not legitimately with the military with that. Like a Mark Violet and others, Afghan leaders and kids have roles planting sequence ships and fake ties, fake nature ties, fake motivations for it too. Because they're screening the motivations. We're all supposed to understand how the breaching method was involved with the motivations of everyone for roles with things that no one wanted collusions with, but they had no choice. You guys have replaced what our founders had communicated for us. You guys can't, and then that's why you can't even follow mandated law. The news doesn't follow mandated law as collusion /S and pretend it's because the other networks are the other party. Get down, get them on paper, one name in sequence. Get me off the fake conversations with WFSB. Please, CBS, please do what's right. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Get that. I think it's a Rogers Suzanne. He has worse than criminal incompetence too. If it's not him and it's someone else, get them on paper. Get me off the fake conversations with their sources too, and fake ties to them. And they have Facebook with the Facebook page of the campuses with the multiple police departments and intelligence making confessions. I don't know that Marine from Newington, and he's involved also. There's a Pat Vincent. The intelligence community I never had a word of conversation with a Pat Vincent. The intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that Pat Vincent is involved with the Fred Grisette, who I recorded, involved with and asked people from private schools, involved with predicate acts on my street, with retired police chiefs and their families and intimate ties, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, tied to this John Maiano too, and their roles with abuses of the girl at that modern pastry per a Fred Grisette. And I recorded it. I don't know her. I never got to speak with her. A Tim O'Brien and a Ray Clow also involved them with their whole careers with the intelligence community, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, all kinds of cover-ups with their roles with the prisons too, and the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices with the same House /S also involved with wire crimes with the Wethersfield police since I was a kid, not just falsified police reports. Ones with the name DeMoro have wire crimes and other natures of organized crime acts and roles with the Wethersfield Police Department since they were kids. And sequence ships, they're educators. They recorded confessed. There's a Mr. Neville involved with them all along Route 3. A Mr. Neville repeated his roles with Route 3, and and conjunctions to it and to that. These are people involved with Vermont interstates, interstates in New York City, and these are people involved with the name Scalora, with Wethersfield police confessions about their roles with them too, with people tied to the name Scalora, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids with them, and with a whole bunch of people tied to intimate ties to the retired Wethersfield police chiefs and family intimate ties of mayors too. And they get involved with other people's conversations. All ages and natures of investigations, investigators in their campuses are and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And they were abused this way too. That's why you guys can't think about principles of American history properly. Otherwise, we would have brought up James Madison's plan, which is increasingly, it's replaced more and more different ways. When it's the only answer, and it's increasingly valued.